countdown continues. T-minus 4 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Skip Chauvin informing the astronauts that the swing arm now coming back. The astronauts will have a few more reports coming up in the countdown. Armstrong at the 45-second mark in the count when he gives a status on the final alignment of the stabilization and control system. We're now passing the 4-minute 30-second mark in the countdown. Still go at this time. The swing arm now coming back to its fully retracted position as our countdown continues. T-minus 4 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Skip Chauvin informing the astronauts that the swing arm now coming back. The astronauts will have a few more reports coming up in the countdown. The last business report will be from Neil Armstrong at the 45-second mark in the count when he gives a status on the final alignment of the stabilization and control system. We're now passing the 4-minute 30-second mark in the countdown. Still go at this time. The swing arm now coming back to its fully retracted position as our countdown continues.
During the years of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the USA, space technology played an especially important role. The two superpowers were in competition for supremacy in space exploration. John F. Kennedy announced NASA's Apollo space program in 1961 with the aim of sending astronauts to the moon. Apollo 11 was the fifth manned mission in the Apollo program. The spacecraft was propelled into space on a 3-stage Saturn V rocket from Launch Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, Florida, on the 16th of July 1969. The Apollo 11 spacecraft had a crew of 3. Edwin Aldrin as lunar module pilot, Neil Armstrong as commander, and Michael Collins as command module pilot. As a first stage of the mission, the spacecraft was inserted into low Earth orbit. Then, the translunar injection was performed after completing 1.5 orbits around the Earth. This process took 3 days. Then, the spacecraft entered the lunar orbit and completed 30 cycles altogether. The first step of landing was to wake up the lunar module, which separated from the command module during the 13th lunar orbit. The successful and smooth landing took place on the 20th of July, 1969, on the previously appointed landing site at the Sea of Tranquility. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. 6 hours after the landing, the door to the lunar module was opened, and Armstrong, followed by Aldrin, stepped onto the moon and said, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." Armstrong positioned a camera and photographed the surface, while Aldrin studied motion by constantly walking and hopping. Then they set up the scientific instruments and other objects, including the American flag. They collected samples, carried out measurements, and talked to President Richard Nixon through a telephone radio transmission. After completing the work there, they re-entered the lunar module and lifted off. Later, they successfully docked at the Command Module Columbia, commanded by Collins. After completing the 30th orbit, the spacecraft entered the trans-Earth trajectory and headed back to the Earth. At the end of Apollo 11's historic trip, the crew splashed down in the Pacific Ocean on the 24th of July, 1969.
Different, but it's very pretty out here. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Oh, that looks beautiful from here. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here. It's one small step
A rocket lifts off from Earth's surface, gaining speed and altitude, and breaking free from Earth's atmosphere. It reaches low Earth orbit, LEO, approximately 200 to 300 kilometers altitude, and circles Earth, gaining speed and momentum. Next, the rocket's upper stage ignites, increasing velocity to approximately 10.2 kilometers per second, and the spacecraft breaks free from Earth's gravitational pull, entering a lunar transfer orbit. The spacecraft then travels through space, following an elliptical trajectory, gaining. As the rocket soared into the sky, it embarked on a monumental journey, leaving Earth's gravitational pull behind. With precision and power, it traversed the vast expanse of space, reaching the lunar orbit in mere days. Upon arrival, the rocket expertly executed a lunar orbital insertion, slowing its velocity to harmonize with the Moon's gravitational rhythm. Now, it circled the Moon, a technological marvel in the stark beauty of space, capturing breathtaking views of craters, mountains, and Luna.
That looks beautiful from here. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. That looks beautiful from here. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. That looks beautiful from here. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. That looks beautiful from here. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here. It's one small step